Right now, the National Weather Desk, damaging storms, power poles blown down, trees fall on homes. We have team coverage as the storm leaves its mark in the east.
Take a look up there. A tree crashed through the roof.
The tree came down on a truck parked in front of that home.
Concerning heat. Worldwide July temperatures cross a concerning threshold. What it could mean for future weather? And is all this heat really for the birds?
Our feathered friends struggle too.
Making a connection. We'll take a closer look at grounding and the possible benefits of reconnecting with the earth.
So one fingertip touching a leaf on a tree will ground you, the same as if you're laying at the beach.
Plus dramatic new images from the Webb telescope.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. All day Monday, people from New York to Alabama were on alert for a powerful storm moving east. Thankfully, the storm was not as destructive as it might have been, but there was plenty of cleanup to report this morning. This was a scene about 30 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina. Heavy winds took down this tree and also several others in that area. Power lines also came crashing down. As of this morning, over 100,000 are without power in North Carolina. Unfortunately, one of the two storm-related deaths happened in Anderson, South Carolina. A 15-year-old boy was visiting his grandparents during the height of the storm. That's when a tree fell on two cars in a detached garage, killing that teen. The other death was in Alabama, where a 28-year-old man was struck and killed by lightning. The storm also brought strong winds to northern Alabama, knocking down trees and also power lines. This video you're looking at comes from our storm chaser, Brett Adair. A church and library also suffered significant damage. We'll have more on that coming up, though, in just a few minutes. But now I want you to check this out. The wind blowing down roughly 30 power poles in Westminster, Maryland. Those poles crashing into 34 vehicles, trapping dozens of people inside for hours, including young children. Everyone was finally rescued by midnight. The road, though, will remain closed and without power, at least for a while. And about 50 miles south of Washington, storm chasers found huge hailstones. Look at this. These measured 4.5 inches, around the size of a grapefruit. While there are no records for hailstones that size in Virginia, these really could be the largest to ever fall in that area. And we have team coverage of the storms and the damage from New York to the Washington suburbs. We start outside of Baltimore, Maryland, with reporter Keith Daniels.
Well, it was a fast-moving storm, but it was in this neighborhood long enough to do some serious damage. Look over here, a tree crashed through the windshield of this car. And take a look up there, a tree crashed through the roof.
We saw half of the roof collapse that was on the floor of the spare bedroom.
Phil Pasquale and his wife Letty were inside the house. The husband in the kitchen, his wife in the living room.
We couldn't get out the front door,
Because the tree?
The tree was totally blocking it. We were pretty much trapped.
The back door also blocked. Firefighters arrived. Crews cleared the way for the couple.
The fire department, I think they moved some trees or did something so that we were able to get out around the back. Thank you, God. It could have been a lot worse.
Well, this is quite literally stopping people in their tracks. You can see here at Queen and Pitt Street, crews are working on a tree down across a roadway. Unfortunately, it looks like the tree came down on a truck. We captured the strong rain and lightning on State Route 267. And viewers also sent in these videos to 7 News Chime In, showing rain, hail, and the wind shaking trees.
It's wild. What a wild thing.
Being from Oklahoma, Mandy Qualls says she is used to hearing about tornadoes. But even after living in central New York since 2015, observing what she described as a small tornado from her car was still a surreal feeling.
It was very surreal. I knew that by looking at the clouds that it looked like that it was definitely a small tornado, and it's just not something that you see around here. especially with the terrain, with the mountainous terrain. You're kind of used to seeing it back home where it's nice and flat.
From her parked car along Route 38 in Cortland County, Qualls says she saw the clouds moving in all different directions, not to mention the huge funnel in the sky moving south.
And we return now to Alabama, where damage from the storm was widespread. Austin Pretz spoke with residents who were impacted by the severe weather.
A number of properties were damaged across Coleman County from the winds and falling trees. Center Grove Baptist Church was hit as well. Pastor Jason Vincent describes what happened.
As I was back there in that choir room, and then the power went completely off. And so just a few minutes after that, I heard just a lot of banging and a lot of loud noise, and honestly thought that the roof might have blown off.
But the roof did not blow off, just the steeple.
And so I walked up to the front foyer of the church and looked to my right, didn't see anything, looked out to my left, and there laid the steeple in the middle of the parking lot.
Another building damaged in the storms was the Coleman County Library.
It looks like where when the winds came through, that they hit the upper windows across the back. They were shattered, and I have seen there's shelves that are down inside. There are materials that are down.
The library is closed until further notice.
A tornado touched down Sunday in central Illinois. You can see the damage, leaving trees, power lines, and even homes destroyed. Julia Rosaire spoke with two homeowners who had severe damage to their homes. For one, this wasn't the first time her home was hit by a tornado this year.
When I got out, I looked down the road and you could just see a mass of dark clouds all the way to the ground, and I yelled at my daughter to come out and look, and she said, forget the car, go to the basement. So
Susan Higgison says Sunday's tornado damaged her home and left trees and debris across her property. But she says this isn't the first time. Her home was also hit by a tornado just a little over a month ago on June 29th.
we were just feeling like we're getting someplace when it hit again, but we're blessed. No injuries. The time before, it blew the wall outward that you're seeing now isn't there. This time it blew it inward.
Higgison says no one was injured, including 15 animals.
We're just so thankful. 8 horses, 3 cows, 2 dogs, and 2 cats outside, and not a scratch.
In Taylorville, Brad Kaufman says the tornado took off a whole side of his home.
Got everything pretty much. As you can see, the house and the shed's destroyed, and we're just lucky we weren't home. And
Kaufman says he was about 10 miles away from his home when a tornado ripped through it.
we got phone calls, and we started coming home, and we couldn't really get here because of all the power lines and stuff that were down.
Kaufman says family and friends have come to help with the cleanup.
I feel very lucky. I mean, it could have been way worse. A great family and friends here that are helping us, clean up and kind of get through it. So, people have had a lot worse than what we have right now.
And now to the heat. Nearly 60 million Americans from Texas to the Carolina coast face heat alerts today. What is happening now could be a glimpse into future summers. European climate experts say worldwide, the average temperature in July was 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial era. Scientists have long considered that threshold as a key tipping point from the planet. If temperatures stay there, we could face even more extreme weather. This is the 11th time the world exceeded that threshold, but just the first time in the summer. Nearly 37,000 scouts are scrambling to leave the World Scout Jamboree in South Korea. This as a powerful typhoon approaches the country. The typhoon is expected to make landfall within the next 48 hours. In addition to the storm, hundreds of scouts have also become sick due to that sweltering heat. And now, today marks 37 years since one of the most unusual weather outbreaks in Rhode Island history. During a 24-hour period from August 7th to August 8th in 1986, 3 tornadoes hit Rhode Island. It was the first time in state history 20 people were injured, but thankfully no one died. Rhode Island had 3 tornadoes again in November of 2021. And if you're looking for more great weather content, follow us on social media. You can find us on all of your favorite platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk or scan the QR code that's in the bottom left corner of your screen. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll look at how the intense heat in the South is impacting local bird populations. And we'll look at what role the weather is playing as students prepare to head back to the classroom.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. The line of showers and storms that brought severe weather for a large portion of the eastern half of the U.S. yesterday continues to march east this morning. That line is located over parts of New England this morning, and our greatest chance for flash flooding will be in the mountains of New Hampshire and also Maine. We're going to keep an eye on that. The trend will be for improvement today, and the payoff day is Wednesday. I think we'll see a lot of sunshine with low humidity for a change. Look for highs in the 70s and 80s.
I'm meteorologist Jonathan Myers, and here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region through the day on Tuesday, starting off with 60s to near 70. Actually gorgeous, some sunshine coming back, temperatures into the mid to upper 80s, and lower humidity levels in the wake of our latest weather maker, a cold front, and it will make some inroads. So some nice drier weather coming for our Tuesday and for our Wednesday, although warmer temperatures near 90 return for midweek. That's seen here.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Readers. A look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. Looking at Nashville, 85 degrees, 85 Atlanta, 90 Raleigh, 95 in Charleston, 99 in Jacksonville. So that front that's brought all those strong storms is going to continue to bring in a little more cooler air behind it, but definitely ahead of it, still some hot temperatures as we've seen. So you can see that we saw those showers and thunderstorms that pushed through. Now we still have another round of showers and thunderstorms pushing through Alabama and Georgia as we go through the afternoon.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Severe weather swept parts of the eastern and southeastern U.S. Monday from this approaching shelf cloud in Hagerstown, under the shelf cloud in Alexandria, winds after the cloud moved over, to this time lapse of the storm passing through Lansdowne, Virginia. In central York County, Pennsylvania, this tree barely misses an old outhouse as lightning strikes in the distance.
Listen to Off the Radar, new episodes every Tuesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Connecting with Earth can be a healing experience, and there's research to back that up. Meteorologist Emily Gracie and the National Weather Desk producer Ryan Berlin spoke with Dr. Laura Conover, also known as the intuition physician, to learn more.
And the Earth has this electrical heartbeat, that DC energy. And so it's constantly pulsating out with that. And then our body runs on DC energy just to maintain wellness. We've done tons of medical studies now showing when someone is connected to the Earth's energy and when they're not. And there's a synchronization, and it actually puts our body in a healing state. And it instantaneously relaxes our muscles. And I don't mean just like we feel relaxed. I mean, looking at an EMG, muscle tension on a study, sham grounded versus grounded, the actual muscle tension drops instantly. Your brainwave patterns within a millisecond shift into a more healthy, less stressed out pattern. So getting into the alpha brainwaves, and anything that's electrical, your heart rate variability within a couple seconds starts to get boosted. So it's a very immediate response when you are synced up and regulated by the natural energy of the Earth, as opposed to being totally disconnected and self-regulating.
If somebody wants to try this, what's the best way to start? And are there different ways to do it?
It's really our whole body that's conductive. So one fingertip touching a leaf on a tree will ground you. The same as if you're laying at the beach. As long as it's rooted in the ground, everything living is DC energy. And so those plants are also grounding you. And actually, there's a lot of surfaces outside that allow the energy through. There's semi-conductive. So cement, so sidewalks are all grounded. And I do this a lot in an urban setting. You just sit on cement steps outside, and like if you can just have your hand resting there, you can, be weeding through your emails or eating your lunch or whatever, and you're grounded the whole time and no one knows what you're doing.
And what do you say to people who say, well, look, of course you feel better. You're outside, it's sunny, you're nice, you're probably taking a walk, you're enjoying yourself, you're not worried about work, you're relaxing. So yeah, you're going to feel better in that. Who knows if it's whether you're touching the ground or not?
Well, we do know, because we have all those medical studies where we take all that away and we're indoors and we have a sham ground and a real ground. And then we see those physiologic responses. So we do know, but I would also agree with them. I wouldn't poo-poo that. Of course, there's additional benefits. There's medical studies that show just seeing a tree through a window makes people get out of the ICU faster. I would say, yes, you're right, all of those things. And we also know grounding provides something else.
And to find out more about grounding and how connecting to the earth can improve your health, check out our podcast, Off the Radar, where we have a longer version of today's interview. You can find Off the Radar wherever you get your podcasts. One group who's probably not so happy about spending time outdoors are kids heading back to school. The unrelenting summer heat is not letting up as students start practicing outside for sports or even for band, putting them at risk for heat exhaustion or even heat stroke. Betty Cross has more on what school staff are doing to keep those illnesses at bay.
Tuba players shoulder the biggest burden during summer band practice. A little shade and a lot of water help them hold up in record-breaking heat.
I've been doing it for a long time, and this is one of the hottest, clearly one of the hottest.
David Mobley has been band director at Round Rock High School for 16 years. Every day, he and his students try to drain these gallon-sized jugs of water.
We drink a lot of water, and we take breaks, and we go indoors when we have to, in air conditioning.
Most students are acclimated to the heat and can manage the sun exposure with frequent breaks and being cautious during marching practice. But a few have felt the impact of the heat wave.
Students have had to stay home because they've needed to, because they've been, the heat has gotten to them.
To prevent problems, the Round Rock School District works with Ascension Seton to ensure athletic trainers are monitoring high-intensity practices for football and other sports.
They work with the coaches to make sure there's plenty of rest breaks and drink breaks, as well as they're looking for the signs and symptoms of heat illness.
Dr. Lee Romero is a sports medicine physician with Ascension Seton. She says the extreme heat can call for extra precautions.
Sometimes we'll weigh athletes before and after practice, so that way we can see if they're losing a lot of water weight during the practice.
This week's record-setting temperatures even had the Round Rock Fire Department providing some wet relief. Everything helps when the weather is on fire.
You have probably heard the expression, this weather is for the birds. And in Austin, Texas, just about everyone is complaining about the heat. But how are our feathered friends weathering the triple-digit temps? Chicago Windler went on a bird survey to find out.
In the midst of this historic heat wave, you might be surprised to know how much bird activity there is all around us, even just a mile away from downtown Austin.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. This is our monthly bird survey.
Cheryl McGrath is a volunteer with the Capital Area Master Naturalists.
Very loud for a tiny little bird.
She leads groups down these trails owned by the University of Texas.
What we're going to be doing is hearing things that we can't necessarily see.
The Brackenridge Field Lab is an 82-acre research station. Typically, people are pretty surprised to see how much we have out here and how much data we collect and how much science goes on.
The science starts with observation. So with a sharp eye and a keen ear, we set out on a 2-mile hike to document all the birds.
Nice and close, that's a Carolina wren.
Experienced birders learn bird calls, but also use technology.
Merlin is an app that you can put on your phone for free
to help identify species.
There are some lesser goldfinch.
Each observation is then entered into a database called eBird.
This is one of the most important databases in the world for tracking what birds are being seen and heard.
We spotted or heard 23 species on our hike, a good sign that birds are braving the heat and not disappearing.
Our feathered friends struggle too, but they Generally speaking, are adapted.
We also saw encouraging signs of young birds that have hatched in our heat wave.
It's a beautiful eastern phoebe. It's a flycatcher, and oftentimes it will just dance off if it sees a bug.
Wendy Hart is an avid birder who snaps pictures of many of the species she spots.
I think it's really great, and I think birds are an amazing barometer of the environment and how climate's affecting the environment.
But it's not all for science. There's something magical about this place.
What I would consider the illusion of seclusion.
In Austin, Texas, I'm Chicago Windler for the National Weather Desk.
And a bit of space news. The Webb telescope recently captured a stunning new look at the iconic Ring Nebula. The new image captures never before seen details within the colorful nebula. The Ring Nebula has been observed for years and can be seen through amateur telescopes. The nebula is home to the remnants of a dying star as it releases the bulk of its mass. Before we head to break, a stunning view of England's southern coast at Old Harry Rocks.
Well, a very good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael. Taking a look at your weather across the Midwest. Things remaining kind of temperate across the area. We're staying in the 80s most of the Midwest. 79 for the high there in Milwaukee for the coolest temperature here. But a couple of isolated showers there. Got thunderstorms developing for the day tomorrow, though, moving their way in from the south. And as we continue on into your Thursday, that shifts more towards the Ohio Valley and out of here. A couple of thunderstorms there to the north as well.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. We're starting off a little toasty, mostly into the 80s across South Texas into Louisiana. Cooler as you get up into Oklahoma, maybe up into North Texas. We'll be watching some rain that'll fire up along Louisiana and Mississippi. Maybe a little sea breeze shower down toward Louisiana, but for the most part, looks like it's going to be another triple-digit day. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia, and that's a look at your regional weather.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. The excessive heat advisories continue across the four corners. Very dry weather continues the elevated fire risk as we're expecting some mountain thunderstorms to stretch up through parts of Idaho and Montana. But the next weather makers moving through, we have an area of low pressure trying to bring cool weather down into the southwest, but it's only going to spawn some of those mountain thunderstorms while it stays dry for the Pacific Northwest. That's the scene from here.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
We bring you great weather content here on the show, but we also have a ton of great stuff on social media. Here's a recent TikTok post from meteorologist Cherison Clark explaining sea breeze.
Another installation of whiteboard weather. Today we're talking about something that usually takes place or forms along the ocean, but really can take place and form along any large body of water, and that is the sea breeze. Let's pretend that we're in Charleston, South Carolina, okay? So we've got the water, that's the Atlantic Ocean. Here we've got the land, but then you also have the sun right here. That sun is warming up both the water and the land, but the land warms up just a little bit quicker than the water. So here you have your land, which is much warmer than the ocean. So that warm air will start to rise. But then that colder air over the ocean, that'll start to push a little bit further inland. And that'll actually replace that warm air that's rising. So you have that unstable atmosphere, you have that warm air rising, that's your lifting mechanism. That's when you're going to start to see those showers and thunderstorms develop.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow on the National Weather Desk, we'll look at how the intense heat is impacting hops production in the Midwest. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Tuesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. says, especially one that says, especially one that says,
Thank you all for what you're doing. Thanks. Thank you. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who is working tirelessly to support our children and their digital security, Secretary Miguel Cardona, my friend. Thank you.
Good morning. How is everyone? Isn't it great to have a teacher in the White House? How about Dr. Biden? Thank you. Thank you for your leadership and for always understanding how important it is to make sure that our schools are safe for our students and our educators, and for championing it the way you do. And I want to thank everyone for being here. I know we had a little bit of a curveball yesterday, but either you packed well or you supported our local stores and bought yourself another shirt for today. Really, really glad that you're here, that we're here together, here to discuss a very important topic, cybersecurity in our schools. When we were at the height of the pandemic, it wasn't board games that got my own children the socialization that they need. It wasn't even books or sports, because they weren't able to get out onto the field. For my son, at the time he was about 16 years old, it was his Xbox. And for those of you with teenagers, you may know where I'm going with this. He was playing Madden with his cousins online. He was socializing with his family members and his friends. That was the socialization he was getting. For my daughter, who was about 14 at the time, it was an app called House Party. Anyone familiar with that? Well, that was her way of seeing her friend's face. Because she was told 2 weeks later, you're going to be back in school. And after the second month, it was really hard and scary. So that's what she used to socialize with her friends. And I mention this first because it shows that technology can benefit our young people. At its best, technology can help our students connect with each other and their learning in a way that nothing else can. It also reminds us that we live in a digital age. As I always say, the device is the new pencil in our schools. Last school year, the average number of unique educational technology tools accessed per school district was over 2,500. And keep in mind, those numbers don't even capture the social media apps students are using or the digital infrastructure and systems our schools rely on. So when schools face cyber attacks, the impacts can be huge. Think about the ransomware attack that led to more than 500,000 students and staff members in Chicago public schools having their personal information disclosed. Or think about the school district in my home state of Connecticut that had to postpone the first day of school for 18,000 students because a cyber attack hit a system the district used to manage school bus routes. Let's be clear. We need to be taking these cyber attacks on school as seriously as we do the physical attacks on critical infrastructure. That's why today, the Department of Education released a series of briefs on how to strengthen the digital infrastructure of education. We need collaboration within government to make that possible, which is why we're also committing to establish a new government coordinating council. Look, we can't talk about intentional collaboration at the local level, at the state level, if we're not modeling it here at the federal level. And that's what we're going to do. I'm really excited about that. I think that's the direction we need to be. We need to be proactive about this. We need to get the best thinking from all over the country. Be proactive, not wait for emergencies to happen, to make sure we have a plan. These represent big steps forward. Together, we can better manage the risks of cyber attacks on our schools so we can better guarantee the benefits technology has to offer our children in education. I want to give a special thanks to Christina Ishmael over here and our Office of Educational Technology for their leadership. the passion that she has not only on protecting students from cybersecurity, but in intentional collaboration is what we need here. And I appreciate your leadership, and Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin also, your passion on this topic. As a former superintendent of schools in San Diego, you recognize how critical this is and what an opportunity we have to lead our country in this space. So thank you for your leadership as well. And speaking of leadership and partners, I am really delighted to introduce our next speaker, my cabinet colleague, but really a friend, someone that I've grown to know over the last 2.5 years and really admire the passion with which he leads. Our Secretary Mayorkas. Secretary?
Good morning. Thank you, Secretary Cardona. Dr. Biden, thank you for convening us and for hosting us. I should say at the very outset that I have always loved school, except math. All of us here today are acutely aware of how demanding it is to work in education. The challenges that students, teachers, parents, administrators, school board members, front office staff, tech support, and outside vendors even confront every day would have been unfathomable even 5 years ago. Cybersecurity threats are merely the latest such challenge. I wish that were not the case. The education ecosystem, like critical care units in hospitals, should be sacrosanct, free from cyber attacks and other threats. Children deserve the ability to learn and grow in a secure setting, and you all deserve the ability to focus on what you do best: teaching, nurturing, caring for, and inspiring our children. The reality, though, is that the cyber threats we face have expanded to every community and every institution across our country, including schools. That is why we at the Department of Homeland Security, alongside our partners across the Biden-Harris administration, are committed to providing communities and school systems with the support and the resources necessary to protect themselves, their infrastructure, and their students. Earlier this year, we released, through CISA, our Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and its extraordinary leader, Jen Easterly, is here, a free, first-of-its-kind cybersecurity toolkit for K-12 institutions, compiling government resources and offering guidance on how stakeholders can best implement them. We're also working closely with technology manufacturers to ensure that what they provide to school systems is secure by design, secure right out of the box. And, to paraphrase President Biden, we are showing our values not only in our words and in our actions, but in our budgets as well. Earlier today, we put out a new call for applications to our state and local cybersecurity grant program, which for the second year in a row will make hundreds of millions of dollars available to school districts and governments to harden their cyber defenses. We have many other means of support available to you from teams across our federal government, and our colleagues will highlight many of them for you throughout this summit. I want to strongly urge every school system and every community to take advantage of these resources and to do so with urgency. Do not underestimate the ruthlessness of those who wish to do us harm. They have proven their willingness to steal and release such private student information as psychiatric hospitalizations, home struggles, and suicide attempts. Do not wait until a crisis comes to start preparing for one. An ounce. That applause was prompted by our Deputy National Security Advisor, friend and colleague, Ann Neuberger. An ounce of prevention today is worth a pound of cure tomorrow, especially when an ounce of prevention enables you to spend more time on what really matters, the education and well-being of our students. I join First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, Secretary Cardona, in thanking you for being here. I thank you for your commitment to our children and our schools and to building a better tomorrow. Our Deputy National Security Advisor, Ann, will kick off the rest of the summit. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today, particularly because it is take two. Thank you to all who stayed overnight to come together, to meet each other, and to work together on this incredibly important topic for our children. By my count, we have an incredible group today. We have nearly 20 school superintendents in this room from across the United States. From Talladega County Schools, Dr. Susanna Lacey, to Albuquerque Public Schools, Mr. Robert Elder. A thank you to all the school superintendents who have traveled here to be here today. We have teachers like Ms. Kathleen Bullock, second grade special ed teacher from Brent Elementary Schools here in DC, and teachers associations like the National Association of Secondary School Principals. We have at least 15 CIOs and Chief Information Security Officers, folks who are on the front lines on the topic of cyber. From Cambridge, Massachusetts, Mr. John Cramen, to Fulton County in Georgia, Ms. Emily Bell. There's education company CEOs from Girl Security, CityBridge, and ClassLinked, and founders of Gula Tech Adventures and Diverting Hate, among others. And almost 200 people gathered here today, committed to education, committed to school. Each of you deserve your own recognition for what you do for kids. Thank you for what you do for children every day. Thank you truly for being here today to discuss an important issue, that whether one is an administrator, a teacher, a parent, it's close to each of our hearts. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome close colleagues from the White House, Dr. Arthi Prabhakar, the President's lead science advisor, and Ms. Campbell Walden, Acting National Cyber Director. Our gathering today and the quick reschedule, putting this on Dr. Biden's and the Secretary's calendars, represents really the priority that keeping kids safe means to the President and the entire administration, because today is about that commitment to ensure our kids can go back to school safely. Criminals are targeting schools with cyber attacks. There were 8 school systems in the last school year alone that were disrupted, 4 that actually had to close for a period of time because of cyber attacks. And as we heard, that's a part of it. Perhaps even more importantly, there's sensitive data of children. There's psychiatric information, sensitive information that really should be protected, released online, data that hurts kids, hurts families, and potentially hurts their futures. So today is about changing that dynamic together. Keeping our students, our teachers, and our schools safe from cyber attacks is about 3 things: equipping schools with knowledge, funds, and people. The knowledge of how to prevent cyber attacks and respond quickly if they do occur. The funds to ensure that school tech can be upgraded and secure. And finally, the people, because we know that school IT administrators are often short-staffed. So expert teams to help them do the work and secure their schools is key. And today you'll hear significant commitments announced by both government and private sector in each of those categories: knowledge, funds, and people. You'll hear about that in each of the panels. We'll begin with a panel focused on learning from a ransomware incident against a school. We'll move to an announcement of government commitments, then one of private sector commitments, funds, security, secure tech, and finally, we look forward to welcoming a group of school leaders who inspired us by the innovation they brought to their schools after a significant ransomware attack. So now that we're reset, I'd like to invite the first panel of speakers to join me on the stage. So I'm pleased to introduce our first panel of speakers. Just about a year ago, on Labor Day weekend, the Los Angeles Unified School District experienced a very significant ransomware attack that disrupted the district's access to email and key systems and applications they need to operate their schools. However, as you're about to hear, the swift action by the school district, closely supported by the federal government, ensured LA schools opened on time on September 5th, a remarkable example of the power of leadership, preparation, and collaboration. I can share from my own experience over that Labor Day weekend that School Superintendent Alberto Carvalho's calls for support were met with quick action. The White House convened federal departments and agencies, and the Department of Education became the focal point for leading that response. So here to speak about the lessons learned from the Department of Education's perspective, I invite Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin, a former school superintendent herself and a passionate leader on education and focus on the health and safety of kids. Deputy Secretary Martin.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and more importantly, thank you for your collaboration. You heard our secretary talk about intentional collaboration. That's what we believe at the Department of Education. In simple kindergarten terms, we say teamwork makes the dream work. I was a kindergarten teacher, so we'll always bring that in. But your collaboration and the way you helped bring all of the folks together that we could galvanize for support. When we got that phone call, Labor Day weekend, from Superintendent Carvalho, as being a former superintendent in San Diego, I knew he needed help, and he needed help now. And I understand President Biden's commitment to a whole of government approach, our secretary's commitment to being a service agency. We went into quick action. But the action wasn't us deciding at the federal level, what do we need to do to LA Unified or for LA Unified, as if we had the answers, although we had critical information they needed. We needed to listen closely to our superintendent, what he needed immediately on the ground, so we could bring the support together in a synchronistic way that would get the outcomes that I knew he needed to get his schools open for the first day of school, which is most important because kindergartners only get their first day of kindergarten once. And so we got on the phone very quickly, and you talked about what you needed, and then we started collaborating. And so I'm yielding the rest of my time so you can hear from him on how he led impeccably what happened. Although we wished it never happened, it did, and we want to hear lessons learned because this is what you and I dreamed up back then when it was going on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I want to begin by, number one, thanking the vision, the collaboration, the courage, and the determination of this administration, its leaders. Dr. Biden, Secretary Mayorkas, and my dear friend, Secretary Cardona, and my dear, dear friend, Cindy Martin. And two people who I called on that fateful weekend are actually on this stage. First, Cindy Martin, and second, Ann Neuberger. The level of collaboration that we benefited from every single federal agency, as well as local and state governments, was really unparalleled and put us in a position of being able to resume regular schooling without disruption the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. So I'd like to detail for you very, very quickly 3 phases of what we went through. Number one, pre-event preparation. Secondly, event crisis management in a very strategic way. And thirdly, post-event decisions and resiliency building based on the learned experience. So prior to the event, I have to say that LAUSD probably had a set of assets, tools, and systems in place, as well as professional development and human skill assets that were significantly above average. We had multi-factor authentication on its way. We had protocols for training of staff on management and protection. But we had also begun work with private sector entities in ensuring that data exchange agreements were in place, ensuring that the protocols, prerequisites, and elements of protection that we demanded were reflected in the vast majority of contracts with private sector entities that relied on data exchange with our school system, ensuring that there were no unnecessary doors open. In addition to that, we had began the work of actually securing our systems in the event of this type of attack. What we had not done was what we were able to build during the event, which is actually develop a Rolodex of influencers in solving the problem. So the calls to the FBI, to Cindy Martin, the Department of Education, Deputy Secretary Martin, to National Security Council. I remember a phone conversation with Ann Neuberger at the White House. The fact that a day later we had 11 special agents with the FBI and federal entities in our house co-managing the situation was incredibly powerful. But let me speak very briefly about one critical thing we did, which was, since we had individuals 24/7 monitoring the flow of data, we were able to detect an attempt at exfiltrating information from our system. We made a critical decision to actually shut down all systems. That benefited us at two levels. Number one, out of the 11 million gigabytes of information we possess, only 500 gigabytes were exfiltrated. Still significant, but it could have been much worse. We knew that we're going after significant assets specific to payroll systems, personally identifiable social security numbers, and student data, as well as contract information for our multi-billion-dollar general obligation bond. They were able to encrypt systems. They were able to exfiltrate very little of those systems because of our swift action. It was the unparalleled bringing down of governmental silos that often exist by having CISA, FBI, NSC, as well as local and state entities come together and work on the same stage that we were able to recover quickly. So here are my learnings and strong advice to the nation. Number one, have a backup plan that is independent from your digital assets and systems to restore education for kids, particularly attendance taking, transportation, food service, critically important, payroll. We were able to transition very quickly because we had backup plans that we were able to activate very quickly. Secondly, have that Rolodex ready to call on individuals who can help you manage a crisis, a situation that you yourself alone cannot manage. You do not have the tools or the intelligence. Federal agencies had, and they delivered big time very, very quickly. Thirdly, have an understanding with those agencies about elements that you should share. So when we shut down our systems, we were able to create a laboratory for federal agencies to be able to retrieve information, the nuggets of information that the bad actor had left behind. They were able to study it very, very quickly, report it back to us, inform the nation. The combination of those efforts proved powerful. Post-incident, we were able to restore all of our systems. We were able to reopen schools without interruption, feed kids and transport kids and take attendance. But we recognized that the one entity we needed wasn't in place yet. So we moved quickly in achieving three things. Number one, strict guidelines for private sector interaction with us, specific to data exchange. Secondly, the hiring of a CISO, which we did not have. And I know there are many smaller rural districts in America that will not have the resources to go out and hire a CISO. Rely on all larger districts, on consortia, on associations to share the cost of that type of talent. Do not go without one. Thirdly, critically important, aggressive professional development, the retooling and reskilling of our own workforce on the basis of what we learned. More often than not, and that was our case, after an extensive audit and analysis of the incident, even redoubling our efforts in terms of exposing our own vulnerabilities through intensive periodic penetration tests to determine the resiliency of our systems. More often than not, it is not necessarily the extreme expertise of the cyber terrorist they will gain access to your system. It is a back door that's left open. That was our case. So we've learned from this experience. We also brought to the board something that is a strong recommendation: alter, through delegated authority, the ability to procure while living up to government and sunshine public records laws, contracts with assets, tools, and systems without necessarily unwarrantedly broadcasting to the wider community, including the bad actors, how you are arming yourself and protecting yourself. I close by once again thanking every agency represented here for the support they provided us, and in return, the information we were able to reciprocally provide to the nation that I believe has resulted in a better level of preparation. I've never seen the level of collaboration that I've seen. And the very last thing, we did pen a letter to the nation requesting additional support and additional flexibility in terms of funding, co-signed by over 2,000 educational leaders across the country, originating from Los Angeles. And I appreciate the fact, because this administration, this government read it, understood the crisis, and responded with resources, toolkits, and support. Thank you very much.
I think if anyone doubted that experience is the best teacher, even among a group of teachers, I think your words, Alberto, would put that to rest. I'd like to now turn it over to the Deputy Director of the FBI, who had a minor crisis right behind him. Deputy Director of the FBI, Paul Labate.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, everyone, for having us here today. It's a great privilege to join these colleagues and partners. I'm just going to echo and reinforce everything that the superintendent said. When we look at, our number one goal in advance is to be preventative and to stop cyber attacks from occurring before they happen. And that requires the ultimate collaboration that was on display here. In the unfortunate instances and situations where an attack does occur, what the Los Angeles Unified School District had done in advance and what they did in the midst of the crisis, the decisions made, is a model for exactly how we would suggest everyone do it. But I want to go back to beforehand, because as the superintendent said, we knew each other before the crisis occurred, and that made all the difference in the world. In fact, some of our agents and analysts and leadership were on the campus with partners and colleagues from the school district just the week before, which is pretty amazing. And having those trusted relationships put us in a position to help and support the school district in responding to what occurred there, and then helping to recover and reconstitute very quickly, as was described. The two messages I want to bring to each and every one of you from the FBI is, one, form and build that relationship of trust on preparedness in advance, so hopefully we can prevent something bad from happening. But if it does occur, we're in a position to help and support you and responding to it. And in the event that something does happen, if there is a cyber attack, please call us immediately, because timeliness does matter. And that's what was on display here. We were able to send in a complement of agents, investigators, analysts, technical experts, computer scientists, data scientists, and others within 24 hours. We had teams on the ground, both from our local office in Los Angeles. Here from headquarters, we have what we call a cyber action team, which is comprised of the ultimate experts in response and within this discipline in handling cyber threats. And we had 15 personnel and more on the ground immediately, side by side with our partners from the school district. And it matters in multiple ways. One, we're a victim-focused organization. We care, so we're there to provide support, reassurance, all the information and intelligence that we can share with a victim and bring to bear in resolving the crisis, and that was on display here. There's real actions we can take. As the superintendent described, we were able to freeze 2 cloud accounts based on the information we gleaned very quickly and prevent sensitive and personally identifiable information that pertained to students and staff members and teachers from getting out into the public that the cyber criminals were using to attempt to extort the school district. That was huge. We were able to take the information and intelligence gleaned quickly and package that with our partners from CISA and Gen and issue a cybersecurity advisory quickly, which informed other potential victims and put them in a position to further defend their networks and systems. We were also able to identify cryptocurrency wallets that the bad actors were using, and again, gather indicators of compromise that went into the advisory. All of these things happened very quickly and no doubt led to preventing other attacks from occurring against other school districts across the country and probably even around the world. We're also able to serve as a gateway for other government resources to come in. With CISA, with us, we mutually inform each other when things occur. We want to do that rapidly so we can bring all of our resources to bear collectively from across the federal government and beyond. All of these things matter. So again, I would say make the relationship if you don't have it already. We have 56 main hub field offices around the country, and then we have several hundred sub-offices. Every square inch of our great country is covered, and there's somebody there for you if you don't have the relationship already. We're here for you in that regard, and in the event that something happens, call us immediately, and I promise you and assure you that we will have the personnel there side by side with our partners in government to help you get back on your feet and protect people going forward in the future. So thank you for the partnership to each and every one of you, and thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be here today. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you so much. I want to take a moment. To note, as the applause noted, that what Paul was referencing was that the FBI is available 24/7. When we called on the cyber incident, if I recall correctly, it was either Friday or Saturday night, and there was no question that a team of men and women would, on a holiday weekend, go where the mission called them, go where they were needed. And for that, just a moment of applause and appreciation for the men and women of the FBI. So as we're hearing, an ounce of preparation is worth many, many pounds of going through an incident. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure and Protection Agency, Director Jen Easterly.
Great. Thank you so much, Ann, and thank you for your leadership. You know, I've been doing this for almost 3 decades, and the level of collaboration, I love the teamwork makes the dream work, exactly, across the federal government, state and local industry is better than it's ever been. And I won't add a ton to what's already been said, other than to really reinforce that what you just heard from Superintendent Carvalho is truly the Harvard Business School case study of how to get this right. I mean, not just the building resilience ahead of time, but also how the actual response was handled in terms of sharing information with FBI, with CISA, knowing that it might not just be a threat to the LA Unified School District, it could be a threat to other school districts. So sharing that information rapidly so that we could do that advisory that Paul talked about. Sharing information transparently, saying what was going on. You might not know everything at the moment that it occurs, but certainly providing information to keep people informed was incredibly important, both to the government, but of course to the students and the parents of the Unified School District. And this event today means so much to me as Director of CISA, but more so as a mom, because I know what that's like to have that uncertainty. Certainly many of us went through it in the pandemic. So we are doing what Paul just mentioned, where he's got field offices around the country. We have built out our folks in the field, cybersecurity advisors, state coordinators, many of the CIOs and CISOs who are here have worked with my teams out there. We are there also to provide support One of the other things that was sparked by the incident last September was the toolkit that we worked on with great friends across the community. I think Doug Levin's out there from K-12 6 to ensure that educators, school districts, teachers have basic tools that they need to be able to implement the basic protections. We understand that schools are often target rich, sadly, as Ann said, but resource constrained. And so we want to be there with our free services, with our best advice, with our guidance, with our counsel to make sure that you all have what you need to raise the baseline on cybersecurity, but also importantly, to know how to respond effectively to reduce and mitigate that risk and be the example that you just heard about from Superintendent Carvalho. So I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for sharing your invaluable perspectives.
We have
And
one
now-
last question for the superintendent. So
Fantastic.
did you pay the ransom?
Did I pay the ransom? We don't negotiate with terrorists. We did not pay the ransom, and I have to say that my last comment on that, we would never. And by the way, that was a very elegantly stated recommendation from our partners at the FBI. So we're not telling you what to do. However, it never really pans out well when you pay. You inspire future attacks, and there's no guarantee that the information you're attempting to prevent from being disseminated will not make its way to the dark web anyway. For the folks, educators, superintendents, create a task force if you're attacked of the best talent across the globe. We did that without compensation in a non-conflicting way, and then establish a running committee of experts that meets in a privileged way to discuss the measures you've taken and the ongoing acquisitions that you're willing to make. And the last thing, force your boards to acknowledge this as a high priority and budget accordingly. We usually don't. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We'll now transition to our second panel, and I welcome those panelists to join us on stage. Thank you all very much for the superb panel. So we heard a great deal about proactive planning, resourcing, and quick action, and the role that plays in keeping schools safe. The attack on LA schools made it critical for us to address the gaps in resources, the gaps in people, on a national scale that our K-12 schools need. The Biden-Harris administration is keenly focused on ensuring the support schools needed, the almost 14,000 school districts, can be better equipped to protect and defend students, teachers, and staff. So this next panel will focus on new efforts, new announcements from across the federal government that we're launching today to support schools across the United States in preventing, defending against, and responding to cyber attacks. So again, to lead things off, I asked Deputy Secretary of Education Cindy Martin to kick off the work the Department of Education is doing to keep kids safe.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll join this panel too. I really appreciate hearing from our superintendent. Asking superintendents, school boards, school districts to go up against these bad actors is like giving them a plastic spoon and saying good luck. Like they don't always have the knowledge base and the resources what to do. And so to be able to hear directly from Harvard case study example, is that what you called it? Yeah. Like pitch perfect, I think you called some of the responses we saw in LA. And I know you heard advice from Superintendent Carvalho about have it in your Rolodex, who to call. Maybe not everyone had my phone number. He happened to because, you know, we're former superintendents together. But we're here for you. The Biden-Harris administration, this whole team is here for you. And that's why we wanted this panel to be here so you could see what we're doing to put together in terms of a government coordinating council and the way we can all show up for you if the worst happens, but also before that happens, as Ann did during Secretary Mayorkas' opening, led off the applause about have a plan, be ready, before something happens is severely the best case. And I want to recognize the fact that Superintendent Carvalho did what I think the best leaders do. The best leaders not just have a plan and are prepared and respond during the moment and come up with something to do afterwards and put together the action plan and the task force. He did one more thing that he's not going to share himself. He sat up here to share lessons learned with everybody else. And the best leaders do that. You take what you've been through, and like good teachers, you teach others. And so that's what we're doing in terms of putting together from the Department of Education our response to be able to support the field, small, rural, urban, tribal, all across the country. Everybody needs support. And we can take the lessons learned from one of the largest districts in the country and apply it to the smallest, the most urban, the most rural, all across the country. And that's really what we're here to do. Because if you look at the data, and we have specific numbers, the K6 is a nonprofit that tracks these kinds of incidents. From 2016 to 2022, K-12 public schools and districts experienced 1,619 that we know of cybersecurity-related incidents. This is not a small problem. This is not an isolated problem that happens sometimes. It's pervasive enough that action is necessary. And as Anne said in the beginning, it's the knowledge, it's the resources, and it's the people, levels of action to implement a real response here so that we can address ransomware attacks and keep our schools and our students safe from this. So a little later, you're going to get to hear from several states that we've learned from. We have some very innovative approaches out there of what it takes to build a really defensible and resilient digital infrastructure. If we know what to do and we know what works, let's give that knowledge to everybody so everybody can apply that. And when they do occur, if something like this happens, it will have little widespread or lasting impact, and it can be addressed expediently with the knowledge base that we have. So you're also going to get to hear from the CIO from San Diego, who I have to give a shout out from because that's my hometown. Yeah, there he is over there, Terry. Yes, I was superintendent in San Diego Unified for 8 years and taught there for my whole career in San Diego before coming here. So you'll hear about the CIO from the CIO in San Diego about how the County Office of Education supports 42 school districts in the county, including, of course, San Diego Unified, my former district, and you'll hear real practical information on how that's being done at a school county level where there's 42 districts involved. But let's continue the conversation here. What are we doing to strengthen cybersecurity? What are the concrete, actionable deliverables that are out there for you to be able to take advantage of now? You already know, hopefully, especially since we started yesterday and then continued to today, but the department released in partnership with CISA the Defensible Resilient K-12 Digital Infrastructure Brief, and in that we're highlighting the cybersecurity recommendations and also all of the promising practice that we know exist out there that we've learned from states, from counties, from districts, from leaders across the country. We put it in one place for you. One-stop shop, one place to go. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's what we know today, and if we know it, we might as well share it. So as my friend already mentioned, the single most important thing that you can do is to prepare. And if you can prepare and put together incident response plans, we do it all the time as teachers. We have fire drills. We have emergency drills. We need cyber drills. Plan for this. You know what to do, and if you don't, we'll help you, and you can put this plan in place. So have the cybersecurity fire drills, because, you know, cybersecurity threats can really feel kind of overwhelming, and given the limited resources that you all have. Like, what are we supposed to do to prepare? We have limited resources, and if we have funding, I want to pay for more support for third grade reading. I have to pay for a CISO now too. Like, how do I put this together in a way that you can use the resources that are there for you? We know that there are district technology leaders across the country that can use the brief that we're publishing today to prioritize what are the highest impact actions. If you have a list of things to do and you're not quite sure where to start, turn to the resources that we're providing to say, here are the top 3 things you can do now, you can do today, with the limited resources we know that you have. Believe me, I understand limited resources. I was a superintendent for 8 years, and every year for 8 years submitted a budget to my board that included cuts. Keeping my kids safe, making sure they were learning while cutting is the calculus superintendents are constantly having to do, and we believe the guidance we're putting out is helping and understanding the context in which our leaders are leading. And since vendors have an important role to play here in protecting our digital infrastructure, I know vendors should also follow all of the recommendations that you see in this guidance through brief, and districts should consider the vendors to do so too. And we want to see our vendors actually following the same guidance as well, because it can't just be up to the school districts and the procurement experts in districts to know how to buy the right thing. Vendors should be selling us the right things as well. And so our guidance addresses that as well. So that's the first thing in the brief. The second thing is the Department of Education is developing a government coordinating council. You heard Secretary Cardona mention it. He believes in intentional collaboration. This is real action, not just words around it. We're putting this into place. It's an opportunity to coordinate activities and policy and communication between federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments so that we can all work together in the kindergarten model of teamwork. We'll make the dream work on this one. We will work together to strengthen the cyber defenses of resilience for the K-12 schools. We can facilitate formal and ongoing collaboration. Stay in constant conversation. Don't just wait for the crisis to happen. Ongoing, formal, informal collaboration, kind of like a lot of you, I think, did last night at Old Ebbitt. That's another story. That's the informal part of the coordinating council. Glad to hear you all had fun there, though. I appreciate that. I got an update about that. This is our department's strategy, having this government coordinating council to work together to protect the schools and the districts that we care so much about from these cybersecurity threats. The threats are not going to stop, but we know what to do, and it's up to us to prepare ourselves, support districts to prepare for this, to respond to and to recover from cybersecurity attacks. So as educators, we lead in our ability to collaborate. This is what we do best. We want to keep doing it. We want to break down the silos. And I personally, being new to Washington, D.C., am very grateful to see our government in action and to see our president and first lady, along with the secretaries across agencies, the National Security Council, all of my friends across CISO, FBI, you all came to help and to support with real action and real support. So on behalf of all the nation's schools, we thank you for the collaborations, and from the Department of Education, we are here to provide real meaningful, timely resources for you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. So turning now to the FCC, the chairwoman of the FCC couldn't join us once the event was rescheduled, so honored to introduce Ramesh Nagarajan, Chief Legal Advisor to the chairwoman, to announce some important FCC commitments in this space.
Yes, thank you. And yes, as you said, unfortunately with the schedule change, the chairwoman couldn't make it today. She was on a flight this morning to visit NASA in Florida. So you might be wondering why the FCC is here at this White House discussion on back-to-school safety and cybersecurity. Well, as many of you know, it's because the FCC runs the longest-standing EdTech program in the country. To understand how that came to be, let's go back to 1996. That's when I tied up my parents' phone line by spending all day connecting to AOL. Maybe you did too. But back in 96, Congress had the foresight to task the FCC with developing what became known as the E-rate program. E-rate was visionary, because Congress saw clearly, back in 96, that it would be a good idea to bring high-speed internet service to every school and library in this country. In the years since, this program's been a quiet powerhouse. It's supported broadband in schools and libraries across urban America, rural America, and everything in between. And because great programs don't thrive without continuous attention and care, the FCC has improved this program from low-speed to high-speed connections, and from wired connections to wireless connections and Wi-Fi connections. While the E-rate program has been focused on supporting basic connectivity, we've heard loud and clear from stakeholders that cybersecurity is an increasing concern. That's because schools, as we have heard today, are becoming a prime target for cyber attacks. And perhaps the most concerning is the rash of ransomware attacks on schools, including in districts like Los Angeles, like Superintendent Carvalho told us today, as well as in Baltimore, Miami-Dade, Minneapolis, and over 1,600 districts across the country. This is a problem just too big and too complex for any one agency to handle alone. It requires a whole-of-government approach, like the First Lady told us today. So here's what we're doing at the FCC to support that whole-of-government approach. The chairwoman has proposed to her colleagues that the FCC establish a pilot program to support cybersecurity services for K-12 schools and libraries. This pilot program would run for 3 years with a budget of $200 million. This pilot program will help provide all of us here today with valuable insights about how to leverage government resources to address the cybersecurity threats that schools and libraries face. A central theme that we plan on exploring in the pilot program is how to complement the work of our partners at CISA and the Department of Education with greater experience and more programs in this area. We also look forward to incorporating the recommendations in the joint brief that was just mentioned into our pilot program and seeing how we can fund those. At the FCC, we're proposing to establish the pilot program within the Universal Service Fund, but separate from the E-rate program. Based on the public record, we think this is the best way to make sure that gains in cybersecurity don't come at the cost of undermining E-rate's success in promoting digital equity and basic connectivity. Ultimately, our goal here is to learn from this effort, identify how to get the balance right, and provide our federal, state, and local government partners, including all of you gathered here today, with actionable data about the most effective and coordinated way to address this growing problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramesh, for this meaningful commitment from the FCC to really help schools. So now to close out our panel, I'd like to turn it to the Director of CISA, Jen Easterly.
Great. Thanks so much, Ann. You know, I know most people in this room probably know what CISA is, what we do, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We love security so much we needed it twice in our name. That wasn't my doing. But we are the newest agency in the federal government, so just about 5 years old this November. But we're not a regulator. We don't collect intel. We're not law enforcement. We're not military. We are entirely a voluntary agency who works every single day to build trusted partnerships. And it's why we spend so much time and why we've built our field presence working with our partners at state and local, working with our federal partners, working with our industry partners to ensure that we are always adding value, that we're being transparent, that we're being responsive. And so the first thing that I'd mention is, as we talk about what we're doing, please continue to give us feedback. I know our CIOs and CISOs will always give us that feedback because we hear it pretty constantly, but I would ask for everybody because this is something that we absolutely have to do as a team. Just a couple things on what we've done and what we are doing. As the Secretary mentioned, you know, a lot of this comes down to resources. And so we just announced that second tranche of our state and local cybersecurity grant program, which is fantastic, came with the infrastructure bill, $375 million. We wrote specific language in there about protecting our schools. So please make sure you take a good look at it. Work with your CIOs who manage that. And if you have any questions at all, we have our regional field personnel who are in every state. You can reach out to them. We actually just put something up on our webpage, CISA.gov, that points you to all of these resources. As I mentioned earlier, the toolkit that we developed that was really sparked by the LAUSD incident, we've been working with schools, engaging to ensure that you all understand the simple steps that can be taken to help drive down risk. Of course, my favorite is enabling multi-factor authentication, but this is a very sophisticated audience, so I'm sure you all already have that done. Cindy mentioned the terrific collaboration on digital and resilient infrastructure. Shout out to you, my friend, of course, and Mike Klein and Elena Clark on my team who did amazing work on this. One of the things that we worked hard to do was to align the recommendations in the